Good evening, everyone. Guess what? Inflation in Australia is at a 13-month high. It's ticking back up. What a time for the treasurer of this country to celebrate the job well done, the back patting phase. I've been talking about this in a lot of my previous videos. Firstly, that governments and central banks, like the Reserve Bank of Australia, they deliberately create the inflation, and we'll look at some quotes on that. And I've linked my previous video on the inflation problem not being solved. And that's the second point, is that they have, despite the back patting we're getting from our politicians, they have not solved the inflation problem, and governments around the world have been cutting interest rates at a time when inflation is bottoming and starting to trend back up. They're kicking off, in my opinion, the next bigger and more destructive wave of inflation. Let's have a quick listen to the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers.
There's a lot of uncertainty and volatility weighing on the global economy, but Australia is in an enviable position.
Did you hear that? We're in a great position. All this inflation we've had, and let's have a look firstly at well, not firstly, but let's have a look at Jim Chalmers' quote on his Twitter or X post today. Jim Chalmers said, "Today's figures show the substantial and sustained progress we've made together on underlying inflation. Headline inflation, which is now 3%, meaning 3% a year, headline inflation has been at or below 3% for more than a year, and underlying inflation has now been within the Reserve Bank's target range." Hear that? Reserve Bank's target range for 9 months in a row. So what he's telling you, it's very open knowledge. The Reserve Bank of Australia deliberately tries to make your cost of living go up 2 to 3% each year on top of all the inflation we've had. Why would we want our cost of living to go up any more than it already has? And of course, the RBA, they're not worried. Let's
Rate
have a
cuts?
listen.
Probably not. Just this week, the Reserve's governor said that the bank was more interested in underlying inflation than the more volatile headline figure.
There you go. So in other words, let's look at the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the monthly CPI indicator. You can see, if I don't hover over that chart, that it's bottoming and starting to trend back up again. If we look at the CPI that excludes volatile items, you just heard with the governor doesn't want to look at the volatile items. Well, that inflation rate is 3.4% a year. Now, she's talking about the annual trimmed mean, which is this somewhat doctored, well, all the inflation numbers are doctored, but this is probably a little bit more doctored. And that's still running at 2.6%. So again, why is our treasurer celebrating the progress they've made when your cost of living is out of control? It's gone way up, right? And now it's at a 13, the pace of your cost of living going up is at a 13-month high today. And why would you want your cost of living to go up another 3% every year on top of how much it's already gone up? Why is this something for our treasurer to be celebrating?